YouTube is awesome, but if you're trying to learn how to mix music on YouTube and you're struggling, you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling like your music isn't actually sounding any more professional, I want you to know that it might not actually be your fault. Let me explain. But first, let me say, welcome to the Band Guide. I'm your band guy, Colin, and over the last few years, I've helped thousands of people create more professional sounding music, and I've been doing it largely on YouTube. And on YouTube, I've learned from comments that I've gotten, questions that I've gotten from students, and from other YouTubers that I've seen, met, worked with, or seen in communities, things like that, and just learning the YouTube algorithm and how it all works. I've learned that there's kind of this seedy underbelly, if you will, of bad information that gets perpetuated on YouTube. And I don't think it's really anyone's fault. I don't think anyone's being nefarious. I don't think YouTube's a bad actor. I don't think that any of these YouTubers are bad actors. I think they're all decent people that really want to help you. But they get caught up in this thing that actually doesn't help you. It actually hurts you and holds you back. And so in today's video, I want to explain it, because if you learn this and you understand this, then anything that you want to learn how to do on YouTube is going to be much easier for you. And it's going to obviously make mixing much, much easier for you and help improve your mixes much, much faster. So let me first explain what it is, why it happens, and why it's so wrong, and then I'll explain what to do instead. So let's start with what it is, why it happens, and why it's so wrong. Well, what it is that YouTube is an algorithm. It is a channel that is trying to keep you here, and they base so much of that on what videos get the most clicks and the longest watch time. So what gets people to come to it and then stay on it. And then they will show that to more and more and more and more people. And this gets reinforced in some really weird ways. And YouTube doesn't know if that video is actually helping you learn to mix any better. It knows that you clicked on it and that you stayed on it. So it shows it to more and more people. But a lot of the things that people click on and stay on aren't actually necessarily helpful. They're just cool and they're interesting. If you've heard of shiny object syndrome, they're a shiny object that is like, oh, that seems neat. That seems like it could be helpful. And in some cases, sure, it might be helpful. But in a lot of cases, the stuff in terms of the mixing world that gets clicked on and people stay on it is the stuff that's very interesting. It makes some logical sense. It's a little bit complicated, which is cool, but it doesn't necessarily actually help you that much. And understanding that and understanding that YouTube is going to favor that content can really help you, because what happens is that video continues to get more and more viewers. So it gets more and more popular. So then you see it, because it has so many views, you attribute more value to it. You think, and this is the royal you, I don't know what you do, but the royal you, people generally think that it is more valuable, that it must be something I need to include in my mixes because it has 2 million views. How could it not be something I need to include in my mixes? And then it gets reinforced in this weird way by YouTubers who may be totally well-intentioned, but they want to grow their channel. It's totally understandable. So they go to these bigger YouTubers and they see, oh, wow, that video has 200,000 views on it. I could talk about that on my channel. Even so it may not be the most helpful thing to you, but they know it's a legitimate topic. It's a legitimate thing. But now you're seeing not just a video that has 200,000 views or 2 million views on it, but you're also seeing these 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 other YouTubers also talking about it. So then you start to think, man, I really got to be doing whatever that technique is. And this could be anything. A lot of the common ones are things like always side chaining your kick and bass. That's probably like number one. High pass filter, everything. That's a little bit more legitimate, but it gets lost in the context. Mix and mono gets lost in the context. Sidechain your instrument bus from your vocal. All these things, it's like cool, neat, makes a little sense, a little complicated. Seems like it might help a little bit. Certainly in the example they give, it helps, but it isn't necessarily going to help you in your music. So understanding that the video is getting reinforced by the algorithm and then it's getting double reinforced by these YouTubers allows you to just recognize, like pull the curtain back and realize, okay, maybe I don't need to put as much value into those things, but then why not? And what do you want to put the value into? So the better thing is that I can't tell you exactly what all these videos are because there's so many of them, but what I can do is tell you what videos you should focus on, what things you should focus on, and why they make a bigger difference. So it's not that these things can't be helpful, it's that they are helpful probably in a very specific instance where someone who has very honed ears used it in a very specific way to help get their mix 1% better. And that's pretty cool. And that seems really helpful, especially when you're like, man, my mixes aren't sounding as good. His mixes sound great. I must do that thing that he's doing. In reality, what made his mix sound great is the fundamentals. And those are just 5 things. And if you focus on those 5 things in any video that you are coming across and really trying to learn from, our videos around those 5 things, then you will improve much, much, much faster. I just want to interrupt myself here really quick to show you a before and after of a mix where we've only applied the fundamentals. If your mix isn't sounding at least this good, then all you should be focusing on right now is learning and nailing the fundamentals.
Instead of crying at the table, instead of giving out the names, instead of lying that you're stable, instead of pushing it away, you say it's just to get out, yeah, it's just to get out of the figure. Now you're saying you're proud, yeah, you're saying you're proud. We're all getting sick of it, yeah.
The more you understand and apply the fundamentals, and the better you understand and apply the fundamentals, and the more you apply and practice the fundamentals, the better mixes are going to get. And disproportionately so, because the fundamentals get you miles, these little tricks get you inches. So if you are halfway point in a marathon, you're not worried about what's going to get you the last few inches. But if you're at the 26 point whatever mile mark in a marathon, you can certainly start thinking about what's going to get you those last few inches, right? So when you're starting out, any mix can get 90 to 100% there with just the fundamentals. Any mix. There's no mix that needs complicated things to happen to get to the 90% mark. And in a lot of cases, there's plenty of mixes that can get a full 100% great killer mix with just the fundamentals. And again, these are volume, EQ, compression, effects like reverb and delay, and then automation to just fine-tune the mix that last little bit. And so if you take the fundamentals and really drill in on them, you can get 90%. But if you're not yet getting 90%, you're getting 50%, and you were to take a bunch of these complicated things that you learned from all these cool tricks that have a million views on YouTube or TikTok or wherever, you will maybe get up to 51%, 52%. Or worst case, your ears aren't actually honed enough yet, because a lot of times they're a little complicated, they're neat, but you might actually be hurting your mix and taking it back a little bit as opposed to improving it and moving it forward. But let's say you stitch them all together, you might be able to get 55, 60%. That's great. But if you spent that same amount of time that you did learning those fancy things, you might have been able, and just focus that same amount of attention on fundamentals, you might have been able to go from 50% to 80% to 90%, maybe even 100%, and you didn't need to spend all this time, waste all this time just learning those really complicated things. And then over time, as you get better, you'll start to understand why those things might be helpful, what situations they might be helpful, and you could apply them to a 90% mix to help you get to a 91% mix, right? That's the way to think about it. That's the way to parse it out. And when it comes to what you should do instead, I already mentioned focus on the fundamentals. Let me give you something to help with that. First, I have a guide. It's a 6-step checklist that goes through. It's the 5 fundamentals, but applied over 6 steps. It's completely free. Just walks you through step by step how to do them. It's really, really helpful. It's helped out thousands of people, and it's totally free. So be sure to pick that up. I'll also link to a video above here where I go through the entire process, explaining every step really in depth. It's like a 3+ hour video that goes through everything, and it's all focused on the fundamentals. So this is all the stuff that's going to get you 90 to 100% in your mixing. Download the guide if you have the time and want. Check that out, but always get the guide because you could quickly reference back to it with any mix you do in the future. Second, always ask what's the simplest way that I could fix this issue. So, for example, the other day I shared a mix in a forum, in a community, and somebody commented, forum, who says that anymore? Anyway, in a community, and someone said, hey, this mix sounds great, but that vocal feels like it's not cutting through as much as I'd like for it to be, which again, mixing is also a little bit of preference. But he said, I'd like for it to be a little bit louder. Maybe you could sidechain your instrument bus when the vocal's there to tuck the instruments down a little bit. And I thought, why in the world would I do that? There are drums, bass, guitar in this mix. It's not a big dense mix that's super complicated. I could just bring that vocal up a little bit. That's totally the solution that I should go with, right? What's the easiest way that I should fix it? And in this case, I didn't actually feel like the vocals needed to be brought up at all. I was happy with their level. So again, trust your instincts. I haven't said that yet, so not again, but trust your instincts and know that you don't have to do everything just because other people say it. And definitely because you see someone on YouTube do it, it might not be the right solution. And if it starts to seem really complicated and you could think of an easier way to get the same final result, then go with the simplest fix. It's always going to get you a better result because there's all sorts of things that could go wrong with compressing my instrument bus. If I'm not using perfect settings on it, it could get really weird. Whereas if I just turn up the volume on my vocal, how much could that throw things off, right? Not nearly as much. So Always ask what's the simplest way I can fix this. That's number 2. Number 3 is avoid shiny object syndrome. As I said earlier, we tend to see these bright, shiny things, and they seem very cool and they seem very neat, and it is way more exciting than this dull rock that's actually getting us results over here. So we think, well, let me just go get that shiny object. Let me try out that for a little bit. Or this rock I'm frustrated with. I don't really feel like I get it. I know I could do it, but I don't know how to do it. That seems pretty neat. I'm going to go play around with that for 2 hours. And then guess what? Your mix doesn't get any better, because maybe even if you nail it, it makes your mix 1% better. Whereas if you spend more time stacking up these rocks over here, it's not going to be pretty, but it is going to sound better. Okay, 4th and final is come to my free training that I'm doing at the end of this month on why your mixes aren't improving and how to fix it. We're going to go really in depth into a few things that can make a massive difference in how to fix your mixes. So be sure to sign up below. Be sure to grab the guide. If this video was helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if it was helpful and you think it would be helpful to someone else, be sure to share it to them as well. Okay, talk to you soon.
One thing